All right, so get this. We're going deep today. A deep dive into critical thinking.
Ooh, always a good topic.
Right. And we've got this guide from King's Road. It's all about critical thinking and problem solving.
Okay, yeah.
And it's from this SAO program, but I think the ideas here, they can really help anyone, especially now when there's just so much information out there. It's like, how do you even know what to trust?
Exactly. It's not just about knowing stuff. It's about knowing how to think about stuff.
Yeah, like having a filter or something.
More like a whole mental operating system, I'd say.
Ooh, okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So the guide, it starts off by, defining what critical thinking, even IS, analyzing information logically, if you can come to, like, trustworthy conclusions, not just believing whatever you see.
Which is way harder than it sounds.
Oh, for sure.
Think about, how many times had you made a decision, like a money decision, based on, I don't know, a gut feeling or something a friend said without really looking into it?
More times than I'd care to admit, probably.
Right. But critical thinking, it's like, it helps you get past those first reactions.
So you get fooled.
Exactly. Especially with all the, scams and stuff out there, like those investments that sound too good to be true.
Oh, yeah. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
That's where critical thinking can really save you.
Okay, so it's about being skeptical, but in a smart way.
Yeah.
Now, the guide also uses these, big words to describe critical thinkers, Objective, analytical, creative. It's a lot to live up to.
Well, think of it this way. Remember Da Vinci, the painter?
Oh, yeah.
But he was also an inventor, a scientist.
A true Renaissance man.
Exactly. And he didn't just accept things as they were. He questioned everything, experimented. That's what a critical thinker does.
So it's not enough to just know a bunch of facts.
Nope. It's about how you use those facts.
It's like being a detective or something.
Exactly. You're always searching for clues, connecting the dots.
Okay, I can see that. Now, the guide makes some pretty big promises about the benefits. Better decisions, fewer mistakes, deeper understanding. But is it really that powerful?
It's not magic, but think about all the ways we mess up our thinking, Our biases, getting emotional, jumping to conclusions.
All the time.
Right. Critical thinking, it gives you tools to spot those traps.
So you don't fall into them.
Exactly. It's like having a mental safety net.
Okay, so it's more like you got to work at it to see results, like going to the gym for your brain.
Exactly. It's a skill you build over time.
So the guide talks about specific strategies, too. One of them is mental bracketing. What's that all about?
You know how sometimes, you have an idea, but then you immediately start doubting it?
Oh, all the time.
Right. Mental bracketing is like saying, okay, for now, I'm just going to put those doubts aside and explore this idea fully.
So you don't shut down good ideas too early.
Exactly. It's about giving your creativity some space.
Okay, I like that. The guide also talks about looking at things from different angles.
Which sounds obvious, but think about how often we just get stuck in our own way of seeing things.
True.
Remember that whole debate about the environmental bill? Everyone was arguing about it.
Oh, yeah, that was a mess.
A critical thinker in that situation, they wouldn't just accept one side or the other. They'd try to understand both sides,
Look at the evidence, the arguments.
Exactly. And then try to figure out, what are the real consequences of each side's ideas?
It's about getting out of that echo chamber.
Exactly. And being willing to consider viewpoints you might not agree with.
Which, tough, I'll be honest.
It is, but it's so important.
Okay, and then there's independent thinking, which feels impossible these days, with everyone online yelling their opinions all the time.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How do you even start to think for yourself with all that noise?
Well, think about, remember that video that went viral? It looked like that celebrity was endorsing some energy drink, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, everyone was sharing that.
Right, and a lot of people just believed it. But a critical thinker would stop and ask, wait, is this real? Where's this video from? Is there any other evidence to support this?
And it turned out to be fake, right?
Exactly, a deep fake.
So it's like, you got to be a fact checker these days.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so we've got these strategies, but how do you actually put them into action? Now, the guide also gets into problem solving. It lays out some steps and even mentions this technique called the 5 whys.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's a classic.
It sounds almost too simple.
I know, right?
Just keep asking why 5 times, but it's supposed to help you uncover, the root cause of a problem.
It's surprisingly effective.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you keep peeling back the layers.
Until you get to the core of the issue.
Exactly, instead of just addressing the symptoms.
So how does it actually work?
Okay, let's say your internet keeps going out.
The worst.
Right. So the first why is my internet down?
Okay. Makes sense.
Then you ask, why is the router not working? Okay.
And maybe you discover it's overheating.
So then you ask, why is it overheating?
Exactly. And maybe it's because it's stuck in a cabinet with no ventilation.
Ah, yeah, that would do it.
So then you ask, why is it in that cabinet?
Because there's no other good spot for it.
Right. Maybe the modem's in a weird location.
And then you ask, why is the modem there?
And maybe it's because that's the only place the cable reaches.
Ah, so the real problem is the cable connection.
Exactly. So now you can start thinking about more permanent solutions like extending the cable.
Or getting a wireless setup or something.
Right. You've identified the root cause.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So the guide, it doesn't just stop at defining critical thinking. It also emphasizes, like, putting it into action, especially in tough situations.
Yeah, that's when it really matters.
Right, like when you have to make a decision, but you don't have much time or much information.
Like those high pressure moments.
Exactly, like a business deal or a medical emergency.
Or even just like a really awkward social situation.
Yeah.
It's easy to just go with your gut in those moments.
Oh, totally. But that doesn't always work out.
So how can critical thinking help us in those situations?
It's about having a process, a way to slow down your thinking.
Even when everything feels chaotic.
Exactly. So you don't just react emotionally.
So what are some things you can do?
First, like, really define the problem. What are you actually dealing with?
Okay, be specific.
Then gather as much information as you can.
Even if it's not much.
Right. And then start brainstorming solutions.
But no judging the ideas yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mental bracketing comes in handy here.
So you don't dismiss anything too early.
Then, once you have some options, you start evaluating them. Like,
Yeah.
what are the pros and cons of each one?
Okay.
What are the potential consequences?
Think it through.
And remember, things might change. So be flexible, adapt your approach as needed.
So it's like you have a plan, but you got to be ready to improvise.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help, especially from people who know more than you.
Collaboration is key.
Right. 2 heads are better than 1 and all that.
Now, the guide also makes this connection between critical thinking and, well, decision making.
Which makes sense, right?
I mean, we make decisions all the time,
Every single day.
but we don't always think about them critically
Nope. We often just go with our gut.
or do what we've always done,
But critical thinking, it's about being more intentional.
making choices that align with our values, our goals.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of your life.
So it's not just about big life decisions.
It's about everything.
Every choice, big or small, matters.
Because they all add up, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, one thing that really stuck with me from the guide is this idea that critical thinking isn't a destination,
It's a journey.
right? It's something you keep working on.
It's a process of constant learning and growth.
And self-reflection, too.
Oh, definitely. You got to be willing to examine your own thinking, your own biases,
Admit that you don't know everything,
and be open to new ideas, new perspectives.
which can be uncomfortable sometimes.
It can be, but it's how we grow.
Right, you got to challenge your own belief,
And be willing to be wrong.
which is hard.
It is, but it's so worth it.
Okay, so the guide doesn't just give us these abstract concepts. It also provides real-world examples, right?
It does, yeah.
Like how critical thinking can be applied in different areas.
Business, science, relationships, even media.
Okay, that's helpful. Because it's one thing to understand the theory, but it's another to see how it actually works.
Exactly. So the guide gives you these scenarios.
And then it asks you to think critically about them,
It even has exercises to help you practice.
like a mental workout.
Pretty much.
Okay, I'm actually kind of excited to get into those. All right, so let's get into some of these real-world examples
Yeah, the guide actually gives you some scenarios.
to show how critical thinking works in practice.
Like, one example is about a business that's facing, declining sales.
Oh, the classic business problem.
Right. And it's easy to just panic in that situation.
Make some rash decision.
But the guide says, first, you gotta gather data.
Okay, so like market research.
Yeah, what are the customers saying? Who are your competitors? What are they doing?
So you understand the situation before you act.
Exactly. It's like being a detective.
You got to investigate before you can solve the crime.
Right. And once you have that data, you start asking those critical thinking questions.
Like, what's really going on here?
Why there patterns, underlying issues.
You're looking for those hidden clues.
And then you start brainstorming solutions.
And this is where mental bracketing comes in, right?
Exactly. You don't want to shut down any ideas too early
Even the crazy ones.
because you never know where a good idea will come from.
And then you evaluate each potential solution.
Look at the pros and cons, the costs, the risks.
So it's a very methodical process.
It is, but it can be really effective.
Okay, so the guide also talks about relationships, right?
Yeah, how critical thinking can help you communicate better,
And resolve conflicts.
which is something we all struggle with.
Oh, for sure. Relationships are messy.
They are, and it's easy to just react emotionally, you know.
Jump to conclusions, make assumptions,
Exactly. But critical thinking helps you slow down,
and actually listen to the other person.
ask clarifying questions, try to understand their perspective.
Instead of just assuming you know what they're thinking.
Right, because we often get it wrong.
And it's also about recognizing your own biases.
Oh, yeah. Like if you're already stressed, you might interpret things more negatively
So you got to be aware of your own emotional state.
and how it's affecting your thinking.
Okay, so it's not just about listening,
It's also about expressing yourself clearly.
but in a respectful way, right?
Exactly. No yelling or personal attacks.
It's about finding that balance.
Between being honest and being empathetic.
Okay, so the guide also have these exercises, right?
Yeah, to help you practice your critical thinking skills.
Like what kind of exercises?
Well, one of them is about analyzing persuasive writing.
Like an article or an ad?
Exactly. You have to identify the author's argument.
Of the evidence they're using.
Yeah. And any biases or logical fallacies they might be using.
So it's like becoming a more critical media consumer.
Exactly. You're training your brain to spot the tricks.
So you don't get manipulated.
Right. And there's another exercise that's all about problem solving, using the techniques we've been talking about.
It's like putting your skills to the test.
Yeah. You get a scenario and you have to figure out how to solve it using critical thinking.
It's like a mental workout.
It is, but it's also fun.
And the more you practice,
The better you get at it.
so critical thinking becomes a habit,
A way of life.
a way of approaching everything.
Exactly. It's not just a set of rules, it's a mindset.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say it's that critical thinking. It's not just for academics or experts.
Just for everyone.
It's a tool that can empower you to make better decisions, solve problems.
And live a more fulfilling life.
It's about taking control of your own thinking.
And not letting others think for you.
It's about being curious, questioning everything.
And never stop learning.
So, what's one area of your life where you can apply critical thinking this week?
Maybe it's at work, or in your relationships, or just how you consume information.
The possibilities are endless.
So go out there and start thinking critically.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.